Okay, so once again, good morning everyone, and welcome to today's opening session of the 10th Western Balkans Civil Society Forum, which is titled Accelerating EU Accession for the Western Balkans, Montenegro Paving the Way. I'm delighted to be moderating this important discussion where we all together will explore not only the institutional and political dimensions of the EU enlargement, but also the deeper dynamics shaping the region's European path. Now, before I introduce all of these amazing panelists that we have here today, I would like to invite all of you to take out your phones and take a photo of us. No, you will have a QR code soon presented to you. Please scan the QR code and answer one simple question, which I will read out to you now. The question says, and use only one word, please. Why will the enlargement to the Western Balkans be beneficial for the European Union? So, take your time, not too much time, we are very limited, but take some of your time to answer with just one word. We will come back to your answers during the discussion, so all of your contributions will be highly appreciated. So I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. If you're having any technical issues, work through it, and we can begin. So at this point, I'm honored to introduce our panelists for this session, beginning with Nik Jelašaj, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Montenegro for Economic Policy and Minister of Economic Development. We will be addressed by a video message by Marta Kos, who is a Commissioner for Enlargement at the European Commission. Together here with us today is also Mr. Oliver Rukke, President of the European Economic and Social Committee, Mr. Amer Kapetanovic, Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council, Mr. Andi Dobruši, Regional Director of the Open Society Foundation Western Balkans, His Excellency Johan Sattler, who is the head of the delegation of the European Union to Montenegro, and Professor Gordana Đurović, President of the Montenegrin Pan-European Union and co-chair of the EU-Montenegro Civil Society Joint Consultative Committee. So each speaker will have a couple of minutes for your opening interventions. I would ask you to stay seated for the opening interventions as well, and then it will be followed up by a couple more questions. We do hope to have time for any insights and questions from all of you. So yes, let's please begin. Of course, Minister Jelašaj, I invite you to open the session. If you can stay seated, it will be amazing, but if you can, yes, go.
Good morning, everyone. Dear Commissioner Kos, Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to welcome you to Montenegro on the occasion of the 10th Civil Society Forum for the Western Balkans. It's also a great pleasure to have these opening remarks about the accelerating EU accession process for the Western Balkans. Montenegro has always worked hard to be in the position to set the path and open the path for itself and the entire region in this EU integration process. We have done this successfully, and this has brought us into a position to be close to our goal, which is EU membership. Our ambition is to finalize the negotiations next year and to be ready for the EU membership in 2028. We have proven that our administration has proper capacities to face the challenges of the negotiations, that we can bring together politicians of different views in challenging situations and reach consensus about EU membership and put it high on the political agenda. We need to be able that from day one to be a responsible EU member state that contributes to its values and policies. In this regard, we have always maintained 100% compliance with the joint external and security policy of the European Union, and we stand together with the EU in defending international values and norms, as we have proven through our support to Ukraine or through responsible actions taken in our region. Dynamic civil society is an essential part of any democracy to achieve the goals of economic prosperity and social justice. The government of Montenegro has been committed to cherishing the environment for free and open discussion on all issues and matters relevant for the future of our society. Reforms that are being implemented in Montenegro at this stage of negotiations with the EU will ensure transformation of our society and long-term security, safety and prosperity of our citizens. Montenegro welcomes the initiatives such as a growth plan and investment plan for Western Balkans, which have the potential to become a milestone, a turning point in our region, and help us to develop even faster, even before we formally join the EU. Continuous support and commitment of the European Union are a clear signal that we need to build a joint future within EU. The government has given a priority to economic transformation and modernization in key economic sectors based on EU standards, and this has helped us achieve fiscal consolidation and become more attractive destination for investments. Our goal is to keep the pace in implementing all these reforms. We are convinced that in June we can again close several chapters in the intergovernmental conference during the Polish presidency. Additional chapters will be ready for closure until the end of this year. In line with our foreign policy priorities, we will continue to enhance and strengthen neighboring relations and regional cooperation. Montenegro, the interpreter apologizes. The sound is lost. So Montenegro is a good example for entire region. The interpreter apologizes. The sound, something's wrong with the sound. The interpreter apologizes. The sound, we are not getting the voice of the Deputy Prime Minister. We have never been closer to the full European integration than at this point in time, and it's up to the candidates to use this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister Jelašaj. We will now look at the video message that has been prepared for this event for us here today by Marta Kos, the Commissioner for Enlargement.
Greetings to Budva. I wish I could be with you today, because civil society organizations are the backbone of any healthy democracy. They amplify voices, safeguard rights, and hold the powerful accountable. Democracy is not just built in parliaments or courts. It is built in communities, in homes, and in the hearts of all citizens. I imagine I have already met some of you in my first months as Commissioner for Enlargement, because wherever I travel, I always meet civil society organizations. Montenegro was my first visit to an enlargement country. I had lunch with civil society in Podgorica and met women running a soup kitchen for those in need in Bar. When I was in Albania, I met local civil society, but also from Serbia and North Macedonia. In Moldova, I had dinner with a group of women who lead NGOs, some championing press freedom, others specializing in anti-corruption. Each of them was an inspiration. And just 2 weeks back, I was in Serbia. My message was, a vibrant civil society is a strength, and I have encouraged the new Prime Minister to work with all parts of society, because a true democratic transformation is only possible if it is owned by everyone. I'm grateful to the joint consultative committees of the Economic and Social Committee for the work you are doing. And I will continue to encourage governments to consult you at all stages of policy making, because civil society organizations are important partners in the enlargement process. This is why I have zero tolerance for actions that undermine civil society, and why I am working on increasing EU financial support for civil society in the Western Balkans and our eastern neighborhood. Because ultimately, strong civil society means strong democracy. Thank you all for your dedication, your courage, and your persistence. They are making a difference every day. You are great.
An amazing introductory message to somehow, I think, motivate the discussion even further. But first, I would like to invite Mr. Rolke to also deliver your introductory remarks to everyone here today.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister, dear Minister Nisic, dear Nadir, dear Secretary General of the RCC, and dear Regional Director, dear Andi. Dear colleagues, dear friends, first of all, I have to say I'm extremely glad to be here with you today in Montenegro for this conference. I'm happy that this 10th edition of Civil Society Forum is taking place here in beautiful Montenegro, also to encourage your country, Montenegro, to live up to your ambition to become the next EU member state by 2028 and set a positive example for the rest of the region. A lot has been done by Montenegro in the accession talks with the European Union, but a lot still needs to be done. I therefore encourage you and all the political actors in the country to join forces with the social partners and with civil society organizations in successfully completing the accession talks by the end of 2026. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak with Prime Minister Spajic and also with Minister Nisic and EU Minister Gorcevic and with members of the Social Council of Montenegro. And I have to say it was encouraging to see how, I would say, how committed all the actors are really to join the European Union. We can see the public support is great in Montenegro, and I can see there is a will to move forward with the reforms and to be one of the front runners. And I know that we are always a bit cautious with dates, but I can make a reference to President Antonio Costa, who just said some days ago that if the countries carry out the necessary reforms, they can even join before 2030. So if the President of the European Council says this, I think I can agree with this, and it should be, I think, an encouragement for all of us. As it has often been said, accession talks between the EU and candidate countries are not only between governments and EU institutions. I think, on the contrary, this is a process that should comprise the whole of the society and organized civil society, because here we serve as a bridge between citizens and the national and the EU authorities. In the European Union, as well in the Western Balkans, civil society plays a crucial role in sustaining support for European integration and European values. Traditionally, our committee, the ESC, has been an integral part of the enlargement process, providing civil society from the neighboring countries with the necessary support to act as a watchdog for the European integration. And I'm really proud to say that our committee has been at the forefront of all EU institutions and bodies in providing not just empty words, but concrete action to EU candidate countries. Our pilot project, called Enlargement Candidate Members Initiative, has proven to be crucial in enabling gradual accession of EU countries. And I'm glad that Prime Minister Spajic was there with us in February last year in Brussels when this initiative was officially launched during the ESC plenary. It was a great honor for us. It was a pilot project. We did not know how it will go, but now we can say after more than 1 year that by appointing enlargement candidate members, we extend our support and invited civil society representatives from EU candidate countries to participate in the daily work of our committee and to effectively work on the elaboration of ESC's opinions. Our opinions reflect specific common challenges and priorities facing both EU and Western Balkan countries in policy areas such as those we will discuss today and tomorrow during this forum: fundamentals, single market, trade, clean industrial deal, social justice, digital transformation, and the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights. This initiative is fully in line with the growth plan for the Western Balkans, where it advocates for closer and gradual integration of the enlargement countries with the EU, accelerated integration and phasing in to individual EU policies, the EU market and EU programs. Our committee supported the growth plan and reform and growth facility for the Western Balkans, and we are glad that most of the countries from the Western Balkans adopted their reform agendas and that first payments are already being disbursed. Our committee is a strong supporter of a better, stronger and quicker integration of your countries in the EU structures and funds, and we stand ready to help in this endeavor. We also advocate for the establishment of so-called monitoring committees in each of your countries that would comprise all relevant stakeholders, including social partners and specialized civil society actors, to closely monitor the implementation of the reform agendas. This would reflect good examples from certain EU member states in their implementation of the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And I'm happy to see that in some countries this recommendation, in our opinion, is already realized on its way. I think this shows that our committee, together with our enlargement candidate members, give important recommendations how to shape the enlargement process and how to make it as participatory as possible. As you are aware, and this is something that I often repeat, certain preconditions for successful accession to the European Union, such as the rule of law, fundamental rights, public administration reform, and other areas included in the fundamentals clusters of accession negotiations process, are non-negotiable. This is the fundamentals first principle in the accession negotiations that our committee strongly advocates. So, above all, accession process should be a merit-based process. Social partners and civil society organizations play a key role in accession negotiations and the reform process, making sure that their country is going into the right direction. With war raging on European soil, EU enlargement has really become one of EU's top geopolitical priorities. Serious talks and preparations are ongoing for the EU to be ready to accept new members. I sincerely hope that Western Balkans will join our family as soon as possible, hopefully starting with Montenegro in 2028. But if I speak about merit-based, I would also like to stress that each and every enlargement step in the last years, in the last decades, depended also on the political will. So it's merit-based on the one hand side, but we have also to show from the European Union side there is a strong political will. I see this at the moment, and I think we should really use this window of opportunity. We have to use this window of opportunity, and if there is a joint will between all actors, then I'm convinced that we can have some success stories still in this mandate of the European institutions. I hope Montenegro will be part of it, but others should also follow and should set an example. Having said this, really thank you very much for organizing together with us this important conference. I really look forward to fruitful discussions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rupke, for your introductory remarks. I would now like to invite Mr. Amer Kapetanovic, Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council, to also greet all of us here today. And also say a couple more words besides greeting.
Sorry, Hannah, for spoiling the setup, but I'm just following the suit of my colleagues. And actually, honestly, I have a better eye contact from here. And I pay more respect by, standing in front of you and reading my message. Esteemed Deputy Prime Minister Jaloshay, President Robke, Ambassador Sattler, Andy, Gordana, friends, colleagues, it's really a pleasure for me to be here in Budva, not just for the nice view or probably the plunge into the sea. I brought with me actually swimsuit and sun cream. But joke aside, we are here for a very important conversation. Montenegro's progress toward the EU membership is a signal for all of us in the region that acceleration is possible, but only if we combine internal focus with regional commitment. The Regional Cooperation Council, as you may know, was established to make the regional commitment operational. Our task is not to create parallel tracks to the EU accession process, but to help build the infrastructure that makes integration faster, more coherent, and more equitable. And I would like in particularly pay the respect to Montenegrin government. Yes, indeed, I do agree that Montenegro is a front runner, and there is a lot of symbolism of bringing us here with this conference. Albania, I have to say, is also there. One has to recognize that. But what I like in particularly, as Montenegro progressing towards the EU path, you have never abandoned your regional commitments. That's very important, because it goes hand in hand. Regional cooperation is a vital catalyst for the EU accession. And I can see and say that from the perspective of the regional organization, Regional Cooperation Council. I remember vividly when we were negotiating 5 mobility agreements in previous years. Montenegro was one of the most proactive stakeholders there, and for the reason. So I'd like really not to say this because I think it is very important. So, EU accession path does not include the regional cooperation. On the contrary, and once we reach the end goal, still, I mean, people ask me, what will happen with the Regional Cooperation Council and other regional organizations once the economies join the EU? We will just refocus, but we will continue existing because that is very important, and we see that practice across Europe as well. Over the past 2 decades, we have significantly moved forward. And when you say this to press and to some critics, they kind of are not nodding, they're kind of perplexed. But the fact is that, we have region GDP per capita has grown from 25% to 39% of the EU average. But if we continue this pace, we would reach EU by 2080. This is not a joke. I would call it a wake-up call. And that's why I totally agree with what has been already stressed. The growth plan for the Western Balkans and the common regional market as a second pillar of the growth plan is extremely important. In order to speed up the socio-economic convergence and to open the opportunity for all of us to phase into EU single market as much as it is possible, because that's the real game changer. I see Anna nodding there, but I really think that is the case. Let me speak plainly here. The common regional market is not another plan to be shelved, because the common regional market action plan, as some of you probably may know and some of you don't, is an action plan adopted by the leaders of the Western Balkans, fully supported financially and in all other means by the European Union. And the Common Regional Market Action Plan main name of the game is, if we cannot have economic betterment and competitiveness in the market of 18 million people, then we are not ready for the biggest market in the world, the EU single market. So that's the name of the game, and that's why the CRM is so vitally important, and that's why RCC with other regional organizations are doing its utmost to move it forward. We have started implementing the second iteration of the Common Regional Market Action Plan with full commitment of all 6 governments again. Montenegro, through its swift and consistent implementation, shows again what leadership in practice looks like. CRM is delivering results, and that's why 83% of citizens across the region support the regional cooperation. This is the highest record percentage in the history of RCC and the history of Balkan Barometer as was established. But why? We promised the free roaming within the Western Balkans. We delivered it. We promised decrease of the roaming prices in between the EU and the Western Balkans. We delivered it. We promised 5 mobility agreements, and we almost delivered it. We did not because political commitment, because open bilateral issues, and because some political impediments. It goes way beyond RCC's possibilities, but of course we are there to remind and to keep pushing. But what this exercise has showcased is the fact that the region matured to a notion and to a level that we understand that we can only succeed or fail together, because we are so interlinked. This is actually so small area when you look at it from the global perspective that it cannot be the other way around. We are trying with the CRM2 to foster predictable business enabling environment. Business community in region is the biggest supporter of the regional cooperation by all surveys so far. And for the reason, again, because they can prosper, they can make money, they can attract investments only if we manage to remove barriers across the region. And if we really create something we are aiming at, and as we call the common regional market. But there is something also that we are particularly paying attention on, is supporting the digitalization of financial services, helping economies expand access to international payment service providers, and assisting in the design of interoperable digital finance systems. In parallel, we are investing in the regional innovation ecosystem, connecting startups, research institutions, and accelerators to increase competitiveness and retain talent. This work is not done behind closed doors, and you know it. We have always been consulting civil society organizations across the region, including them in all aspects of our work. It has always been like that, and it will remain like that, because as Commissioner Kos rightly pointed out, civil society organization is not abstract form, is the backbone of democracy in every society. And therefore, I think this is something that we cannot, even if we wanted to, exclude from this important equation. We apply the same approach to climate policy as well. The Green Agenda Action Plan, which we are currently revising, includes the climate adaptation roadmap and updated actions aligned with the EU Green Deal. But more importantly here, it reflects local realities captured through direct consultations with youth, environmental groups, and local authorities across the region. To ensure these processes are accountable, RCC is in the process of establishing CRM, Common Regional Market Monitoring System, which is going to track actual delivery. Because what we learned in the last 17 years, reform must be seen in order to be believed. And our citizens have a right to both visibility and progress. Because when you measure what matters, you can manage what matters. And therefore, RCC is really paying a lot of attention on people-oriented so-called deliverables. We have already hosted 2 Prime Ministers Sherpas meeting this year. At the upcoming London summit this autumn, we will present concrete deliverables, not simply promises, and the focus will revolve around the CRM and the green agenda. Let me close by returning to Montenegro once again. Its trajectory shows that when an economy leads in regional cooperation, it moves faster towards the EU. RCC has stood alongside Montenegro in shaping this regional path, not as an observer, but as a partner. This is not about abstract coordination, it is about building a space where reform is easier to implement, businesses can scale, workers can move, and civil society is not afterthought, but it is a stakeholder. So let us carry this spirit forward, not only in Montenegro. Montenegro's final steps for the region, collective leap towards the EU membership. I think, and my last message for you, continue be provocative, continue be corrective of our actions, and continue helping us to move this region forward on an irreversible path towards the EU membership. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapitanovic. And I will now invite Mr. Andy Dobrushi, Regional Director of the Open Society Foundation for the Western Balkans, to deliver his introductory remarks.
Everyone, new friends and old friends in the panel. It's very nice and always a pleasure to be in Montenegro, particularly in Budva. I'll start my presentation actually with a couple of remarks for the translators. Since we had this hiccup with the translation, don't worry. It's not the first time we get lost in translation with the EU. Or in EU discussions, but we're here to see that that doesn't happen, and to me that's the most important. That's the most important thing. It's a very, what you hear very often is momentum, I think momentum has become, is risking to become a bit overrated as well, It has been translated in also the local context is very, very well. And I'm coming from Tirana, where we just finished the general elections, which were run on a huge campaign of pro-EU and EU passport and other things, but which also led you to think that how well the politicians are using in our countries the EU rhetoric, is it translated very well? Is it explained very well? Is it giving the countries the right energy to push forward in the middle of fatigues or disappointments, or also like hopes, and hope is very important. We've pushed for the hope for the past 35 years. The thing is how do we avoid the false hopes for the region? And I think this is where it suggests a lot about the role of the civil society, and the role of these forums where we get together and we define also the spaces which are not only defined rhetorically, but they are defined in real and concrete terms for the civil society. And we've come a long way. 35 years into this. It's 2025 at this point in time, and the region has gone a long way. I think if we want to define it in a certain way, to me it's I think it has defined our generations in a way of imperfect but irreversible transformation. And this is, I think, the crucial thing that we need to carry on. It helps us to carry on, and it helps us to push for this agenda and to push for these discussions very concretely. Because we didn't start with much in the region, but over 3 decades we've built civil stamina, we've built institutional memory and the sense of direction, which is very, very important. What is also very important for us is that, we're not here to rehearse the rituals, but we are here to shape what is comes in front of us. And I think, and I said that this suggests a lot how important these meetings. And it would be kind of preposterous on my side, also to stand and get up here and speak without standing on the shoulders of many people, many organizations, many partners that are also here present, and they have done a lot of contribution in the last 30 years to push these processes and to push the EU process ahead. And no doubt, I don't want to repeat it in terms of rhetorical, like about the role of the civil society. We know what our role is. We know how strategic we are in the conversation, but we want to become active and to become a real part of these conversations. And this context now has given us enough opportunity. And think of it like this. We don't come to Brussels with our hands out, but we roll up our sleeves. And we have seen many instances of this, an important role of the civil society in this. And ESC, I think it has been also an incredible platform, and I want to thank particularly Oliver for his open-mindedness and the space that he has given to the civil society from the region, and in terms of defining but also proving not only to itself but also to the governments that the role of civil society is not only about window dressing. It has a substantial role in translating exactly that part which the politicians tend to get lost, when they communicate with people, the real values and the real importance of the EU integration, which is not about passports, it's not only about traveling, it's about embracing values which are crucial to the well-being and the prosperity of our countries and of our region. I'll not continue longer because I think we're going to have lots of questions also in the discussions, but I was very pleased to hear Commissioner Koss actually speaking about the doubling of the increasing of the funding. I mean, it would encourage her to triple it, like not to double it. But that's very important because it shows also understanding on the side of the Commission. This has not been an easy period or easy times for the civil society, not only in terms of the shrinking space and its fights and its battle, not only the region but all over all over Europe. But it's also a moment where it's struggling also for funding. So also after January, we've seen and we've witnessed lots of problems and difficulties of the civil societies to operate in the region and beyond. So the comments from Commissioner Koss is very, very welcome. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of many of the organizations who are here present, but also beyond in the region. What is important for us is to understand, how it is going to happen and what is the time limit. I think this is what we expect, to move from the commitments, but to move to something concrete. And I think this is very, very important to us. And in the same time, of course, we commend tremendously the role of the Commissioner Koss, like the openness of her, immediate openness and willingness to discuss with and speak and meet with the organizations. But we want to go beyond that, and to see that how these real commitments are translated into concrete support for the organizations. So on an ending note, our objective is not to work through institutional mimicry alone, and the objective is, that only through the local civil ecosystems, and they will succeed only if they are strong enough to participate, co-create, contest, and monitor. So this is where we see our role. I'm sure the discussions today will be plentiful, and we'll have lots of ideas and more concrete conversations on how do we define our role in the amidst this context, which is not the easiest. But I'm sure that the civil society has enough vigor and enough energy left, to continue also in this step and push and make this momentum useful not only for her but also for the countries that we belong to. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dobrushi. And now I would like to invite His Excellency, Ambassador Johann Sattler, to also, you're going to stay seated, yeah?
If you don't take it as a sign of lack of respect, I would stay here.
Feel free to.
Well, first of all, big thanks for this initiative. It's great to see so many familiar faces from the different countries of this region. Thank you for being here, and thank you for keeping the faith. To you, Mr. Röpke, a big applause, not only for organizing this civil society forum on a regular basis, but especially for doing a gradual integration in practice. What you're doing with integrating members from this region, from civil society, from trade unions, from employers associations into your daily work is, I think, a very laudable thing, and it very much fits with what we are doing in the European Commission over these last years with the growth plan, which is also gradual integration, for instance, as Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, into the single market by opening up the single market gradually, even before joining. One of a very exciting date this year will be the 5th of October. Why? Because on that day, at least 2 countries from this region, Montenegro and Albania, maybe also North Macedonia, will be joining the single European payment area. Now that's not a small feat, that's a big one. That means that from this day onwards, all businesses, all privates, all citizens sending money back and forth to the European Union will not pay this crazy fees anymore, which we have been paying over the last period. So that's gradual integration actually in practice. There is much more happening within the growth plan. There is the digital wallet, which is being opened to the Western Balkans. There's these green lanes initiatives, bringing goods quickly into the European Union and the other direction. There is the conformity assessments also for export of products, some more relevant for some countries in the region than for others. Those who produce a lot, like Serbia, for instance, that's a big thing. So that's, I think, is very much in sync with what you're doing, opening up to this region, the European Union, the European institutions, and what you have been doing with this initiative, I think, is very, very laudable. Now, you heard my Šefica, Marta Goss. What she's saying there, I can attest to that, comes from the heart. So she really lives it, and I've seen it when she visited Montenegro, and I've seen it also when she visited the other countries. You know, the meetings with Gordana or Daliborka here in Montenegro. This is not an afterthought. This is an important part of the visit of the commissioner, and I think this is very good news in itself. This exchange is taken very, very seriously, and is also being translated into more attention, more support, and also more on the financial support. So we have been already discussing with her concretely how this could take shape, this better and more strong support for civil society. So this is maybe, because there will be many questions, I would leave it at that. Maybe just a point on Montenegro, which is finally also deserving the name of being a frontrunner. It had this name for a long time without really living up to it. I have to say, now you are the frontrunner, and with the closing 3 chapters last year, and with closing hopefully 6, 7 chapters this year, I'm confident and optimistic that this will happen. You have proven that you can do it. The main test was last year when you did the IBAR, which is basically the precondition to close any chapter is to make sizable, real progress on rule of law, and you did that. And with that, you are moving into the final stretch. Meaning that, you know, it's not a done deal. We are by far not there yet. There's a lot of work which awaits you. The work needs to be done. You know, if you want to close, chapter 11 for this year, for instance, it's agriculture. You need still by the summer pass the laws which need to be there. So there's a lot of laws, a lot of regulations which need to be done. But I'm confident with the speed. You know, you've gained a good cruising speed now. Please continue that, even speed it up a bit more, I would say, because we have lost a bit of time at the beginning of the year. There was a political crisis, which, you know, we have seen unfortunately too often in this region in general, but it cost us 3 months. It cost us 3 valuable months where Parliament couldn't do the stuff which it needs to do. So I think this is also Now I hope everybody understood how valuable this period is ahead of us. For Montenegro, it's the self-proclaimed goal by the end of next year already to close all the chapters. That's very ambitious, but it's doable. But it's only doable if there is this focus and if there is no political distractions, I would call them. Yes, have your vibrant debates in Parliament, use it, but please, no artificial political crises which deflect the attention from the work which needs to be done. And maybe just not only Montenegro is really going forward fast. Happy to see also Albania, where in my previous life I served as an Austrian ambassador, when it was a very distant thought that actually Albania could go forward fast. You have shown over the last period that you can do it, opening clusters. By the end of the year, all clusters should be open. I think that's realistic. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of work to closing the chapters. Opening is one thing, but, speaking from experience here, and my learning curve is a very steep one, personally coming from Bosnia, that the closing, of course, this needs a lot of work, but the great news is that you are moving forward fast. And by the way, this is also the important signal for the rest of the region. Yes, we would love North Macedonia to have also part of the first batch. We would love to have Serbia especially also being part of the first batch. But there are political issues which are putting a brake on that, and which make us move much slower than we would want to move. But I think one of the most important things of this openness of the European Union to new members now, which we have this window of opportunity, is also, if we make it, and I'm optimistic we can make it this term until the end of 29, to have actual new members. It's also an excellent argument for the others who don't make it in the first batch. Because one of the arguments you hear in the region is, well, these guys are not serious. The European Union is not serious. They don't want any new members. By accepting new members, you take away that argument in those countries, and also you reinforce the pro-European movements there and the citizens who want to join the European Union. So with this, I think that's why I'm confident, and I'm so supportive of really moving forward with those who are ready now, with Montenegro, with Albania, in order to also give the encouragement for the rest of the region.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sattler, and Professor Gordana Đurović will be closing the round of introductory remarks.
Hvala. Uvaženi gospodin.
Dear Mr. Robke, dear Mr. Kapetanovic, Your Excellency, Mr. Sattler, dear colleague Đeljušaj, dear Minister, greetings. So, dear guests, I'm glad to have you here in Montenegro, that we are hosting this 10th Western Balkan Civil Society Forum. I will address you with a couple of words. It's always difficult to speak after these very strong speakers and messages. I'm not representing any institution. I'm coming from the civil society, from the Montenegrin Pan-European Union, and I'm co-chairing our joint consultative committee between the European Social and Committee and Montenegrin side. I have to praise ourselves. I think that our declarations in the last couple of years have become more visible, and we have improved our monitoring, and we see that the government is now reading our recommendations, and we are asking the government actually to respond to us whether some of these recommendations have been implemented. We had examples from some countries who have joined the EU in the work of the JCC in terms of drafting opinions. I have a recent experience in this respect. We are facing the new financial framework 2834, and we from the region, a couple of us from Montenegro, actually participated in this debate. We had the right to vote. We were able to even give a written comments, and this declaration was adopted in April 13. Unfortunately, our recommendations have not been accepted, but this was very good experience for us, and we got a reply that in the next opinions, our recommendations will be more taken into account. It wasn't our opinion. Recommendations haven't been adopted because it is a very complex procedure. Because the EU is facing a lot of challenges, complex challenges, challenges regarding the defense budget, then challenges regarding the joint debts that has to be serviced, challenges related to the second Trump mandate in the USA, the crisis of liberal democracy, trade policies, etc. So there are a lot of challenges facing the EU, and we from the region are trying to understand that, because this is the time of big geopolitical challenges. That is why we understand that we have to be more proactive. We have to speak with one voice, to articulate our voice toward the EU institutions, and the doors are opened for us, and we see it in this way. I would add just 3 more things. I think that the process of EU integrations for us, which are monitoring this process for a long time, this is a process which is at the same time an investment but also an expectation. But what we see in our societies all these years is that this process must go in parallel with the strengthening of the social cohesion, not the other way around, because if we are going toward the EU but without strengthening the social cohesion, we are actually acceding as a society which is not ready for a decision-making process and full participation in the EU policies. That is why I think that the voice of the civil society is very important. Recently, I had the opportunity to witness some debates which we had here at the local level, and reports from these debates from Ulcinj, from Pljevlja, from Bilopolje, Podgorica, different towns in Montenegro. And the messages are that the citizens from the local community level are sending a message. They want to have more confidence into institutions. They want to have more social, civic activism, to have less peer violence, to have policies to retain young people in the local communities, to have better health care, better cultural policy. So a real life at the local level, because local communities are the one implementing the acquis. And to have and also some additional specific topics. So this social cohesion is what we need in parallel with the integration process. Secondly, how we are going to accede, according to the Article 49 of the Treaty on European Union, this is a policy of consensus. There are no shortcuts in this respect. We have to have bilateral relations with all the EU member states, and we have to negotiate and to prove that we are actually implementing reforms. So the open question is, if we are now accelerating integration process as a geopolitical priority, can this end up with a membership before the EU is reformed? Or only after the EU is reformed and the changing of the consensus voting decision-making? Or maybe the best option to go with these two things in parallel. We have to be more courageous. Despite the Article 49 being what it is, we have to believe that when it comes to the important decisions like closing all the chapters, drafting the accession treaty and ratification of this treaty in the EU member states, that this will lead to the full-fledged membership of one of our countries. Maybe we are front runners. Maybe this discussion should be about whether Montenegro is aware of this opportunity. Now when we are saying, okay, 2030, maybe it will be a big bank. I'm not sure this is going to happen. Maybe a small bank, not a big one. And maybe maybe just one country can exceed. The worst case scenario is the so-called scenario of the European fortress, that the EU, faced with so huge challenges in terms of consolidations and other challenges, to postpone the enlargement process. So we have to count on flexibility in terms of interpretation of the Article 49, and to seek for this space which is now open for the Western Balkans and mostly for Montenegro. I have to comment what Mr. Sattler said. this year can end up in a way that Montenegro has 33 12 chapters, and that Albania is expecting to get IBAR. So a positive competition is at the same time an invitation for more energetic Montenegro. And the ball is in our parliament courtroom. So I'm inviting them officially to be more effective in approving EU regulations so that the government can actually go ahead in terms of the technical negotiations. And finally, I want to thank to the JCC for organizing this conference, because we here have a space to hear Montenegrin language, and I'm addressing you in Montenegrin as the first official language in our constitution, and I'm pleading with all those who do not think the way I think in my country, that when all the countries of the region accede to the EU, then the Serbian, Albanian, Bosnian, and Montenegrin will be official languages of the EU. We are all welcome, and there is space for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Đurović.
45 minutes left for the discussion, so I'm going to ask you all to be very, very efficient with your answers, very short, very efficient. And can we see the Slido answers as well at some point, the inputs that you gave us at the very beginning? I'm going to begin right away with the question for Deputy Prime Minister Đelašaj, and the question is, when we say European Montenegro, how do you understand this term? What does it mean to you in terms, in political, social, and cultural terms?
Hvala.
Thank you for your question. We in Montenegro have been using that term, European Montenegro, for years. It has often been used within different political and social processes. Different political entities called their list European Montenegro to send a message to the citizens that they are representing this option of European Montenegro. In principle, as a state, we have accomplished progress in those processes. We got close to the EU membership, and then things stopped. There was this vacuum in EU integration, but recently things have changed, and this process has reopened for Montenegro and the EU, and Montenegro has used this opportunity, this space, and the Montenegrin government has worked hard and quickly to be on this train that is speeding up. So last year we were very successful with the IBAR laws and IBAR requirements, and we had this historic opportunity. After many years of waiting, we started closing chapters again, and I hope this is the process that will never stop again, so that we will manage to close other chapters this and next year, and then this term, this notion European Montenegro, will live in practice and become reality in practice, and as the government will give our maximum contribution to this. What does that actually mean, the term? It means proper institutions in place, institutions that will follow the rule of law, that will comply with the rule of law, that will follow clear legislative solutions that are compatible with the EU member states regulations, by establishing institutions and strengthening institutions. Those are fundamentals of a European state. That's what we want to see in Montenegro. Strong institutions should deliver the message to the citizens that they are there to provide certainty and security through judicial power, executive power, because we need to show our citizens that the institutions are there to respect them, to love them, and then citizens will have more respect for institutions, and thus we will create the proper state, the state that can be called European, because we should not do it just because we want to become an EU member state. We want to introduce standards, those standards, and offer them to our citizens, not only standards related to economic development, but all other segments. Just imagine how important political commitment is. His Excellency, the Ambassador, clearly showed this when we had this political problem later last year, and how this political issue distracted us from the political ambitions. We had clear plans to adopt laws by the end of the last year. All the laws were drafted. There was debate and discussion about all those laws, but however, they were eventually not voted, not approved due to political crisis, and so we had to go through all of that again. So political stability is of key importance. Rule of law, that the state respects what Montenegro already has, which is inclusive society. There are many nations and ethnic groups living in Montenegro, several religions. We are a small European Union in itself, Montenegro, where those values are respected and fostered, and helps us all to send the message to the citizens to prepare what comes in the near future, that Montenegro will become an EU member state.
It's not only about the institutions, it's about the values as well, about feeling safe, certain, and emotionally attached to the country you live in due to the work in the institutions. Moving on with a question for you, Mr. Rupke. You mentioned in your introductory speech the Enlargement Candidate Members Initiative, which was a pilot project. But what were the results of this project, and will it be continued?
Yes, I think I announced it during my speech already that we introduced this initiative as a pilot project. That was the easiest way to move forward, and we had to move forward in a very relatively short time frame. And after 1 year, it was at the end of last year, we evaluated the project. Our bureau evaluated the project. We involved the new members, the candidate members, our members, but also other stakeholders, and the results were extremely positive from all sides. Of course, from the enlargement candidate members, they appreciated being first time really part of an EU institution, to participate and to contribute to decision-making process at European level, but also our members benefited extremely from this experience, to have first-hand information from candidate countries and to foster this mutual understanding. So the assessment was absolutely positive, and we then decided to make this pilot project permanent exercise in our house. I have to say I'm grateful for the support of the European Commission. I have to mention also Commission President von der Leyen. She personally committed to this project, and we are now, I think, in the process of some administrative procedures with them, but once we have signed the memorandum of understanding, then we can move forward, and there will be also a call for expression of interest also for Kosovo next time, so we will also involve them in our work. And I have to say, it's of course very much focused on the Western Balkan countries, but we have also the Eastern neighborhood, not to forget them, Moldova, Ukraine, and also Turkey. Even if this country is quite far from joining the European Union, it is important to give positive signals to a vibrant civil society in these countries. And I have to say, the results are very positive. And let me maybe say another word to the joint consultative committees, because we have Gordana here, and my personal experience is that these committees established under the stabilization and association agreements have become more and more important. I see this not as a formal exercise. I see really that more and more we have this participatory element. We have more and more critical recommendations from these joint consultative committees, and we see that we have more and more open discussions with government. EU-Serbia, and at the end of the first inauguration meeting of this joint consultative committee, there was also a statement, and there was a recommendation to the Albanian government following the green example, and regularly report on the state of implementation of the recommendations formulated in the joint declarations of the recent meetings of these bodies. So we can see we are learning from each other, and when I speak about joint consultative committee, it's about participation, about involvement of all actors. And last point I wanted to mention, we have also a dedicated fundamental rights and rule of law group in our house. For many years we had missions to all EU member states, and we decided last year, now we involve candidate countries in our work, so we will also cover candidate countries with our missions. So the colleagues, they went already to countries like Moldova, Albania recently. They will also go to Montenegro to discuss firsthand with human rights activists, with journalists and so on, the civic space. And we can also see that although we are, of course, claiming that civic space is overall shrinking, we see also positive developments. And when I see the Press Freedom Index in Montenegro has improved in the last years, and I think it's even better than in some EU member states. So these are also encouraging signals, and I really encourage all governments, especially the Montenegrin government, to move and to advance on this line. I think it's really worth it, and if we do it together, then once again I'm really optimistic that we can set some positive examples that will show others that it is possible to join the EU once we fulfill the criteria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rupke. I mean, it's good news. It sounds like good news for all of those involved, like for all sides who have some kind of a benefit from this process, but it also sounds like a good way to create this firm web between the civil society and the institutions and the EU. So it sounds like a good job is being done. I'm going to move on to you, Mr. Kapetanovic. So you have already mentioned a couple of promises which have been delivered by the RCC when it comes to the regional cooperation and enabling somehow all of these processes. But my question for you is, do you see a shared political vision for the Western Balkans, or does fragmentation remain a deeper challenge?
Yes, thank you for that question. First of all, I think that when we talk about whether there is a wider political commitment, there is. Otherwise, we haven't been there. I mean, be able to deliver what we have delivered. And by the way, we did not deliver it alone. There is a let's say ecosystem of regional organization that helped us doing it together. CEFTA, transport community, energy community, just to mention a few. I think that when it comes to this commitment, I would go back to what Gordana said. When we try to look back and to think, what was the driving force all these years that moved us from the region that was waging the war 30 years ago, I mean, and beyond, to region that adopted regional cooperative order, working together, I mean, despite all odds. What comes to my mind is just one thing, the EU accession path. And that's why I totally agree with Gordana. If EU remains a fortress, or if becomes a fortress, then this magnetism goes away, and then we have a problem. Luckily, that is not the case. Luckily enough, in the given geopolitical context, European Union made the real choice and offered the region some out-of-box ideas. And I think for the first time we are ready to also think even more out of box. Gradual integration into EU single market, but not also thinking, why not thinking about gradual accession to Schengen as well? I know it sounds like, out of blue, but when you dig down deeper, you see that there are possibilities and potential. There is a good level of understanding across the regions and across the governments in the region that we can do it together. However, the global fragmentation, the crisis of multilateralism, and all these crises that are going on in the world can easily reflect itself on the region as well. And therefore, I think we have to be extra resilient now when it comes to our joint effort to preserve mutual trust and multilateralism as a principle, working together with the common aim and try to really focus ourselves on what is the main benefit. So I think a little bit extended the discourse here. I don't know to what extent I really directly answered to your question, but I really want to say this because I see that we've been challenged from all sides. And there are, of course, disruptive political internal dynamics in some part of the region that also have to be taken into equation. But it all boils down to simply let us. I know Andy mentioned the momentum. Yeah, but let us keep the momentum is really. I see this Commission, honestly, for the first time, very committed to the enlargement. And I see really that they want to be Commission of the enlargement. The Commission that at least will enable a couple of economies from the region to join the EU. That is one momentum. There is a political readiness in the given geopolitical context that help us thinking out of box with new bold ideas. Let us not forget the fact that when Croatia joined the EU, they did not have a chance. What was offered to us through new growth plan and all this. I mean, we tend to forget being perplexed by the numbers and amount of money that was given to the region. But the money is not the only thing that is important here. So all in all, I think that we have to find a way to resist the global challenges. Of course, there are certain impediments, as I said, probably bilateralization of regional cooperation could be one. And I think we should make an extra effort to avoid that happening, because it may kill the very essence of regional cooperation. I could go on and on, but you said we need to be short, so I think if you have some more questions, I will be more than happy to.
Hopefully there will be time for more questions, but thank you for these answers, and also thank you for pointing out the importance of the resilience of our region, which I believe civil society takes an important part in building. So I'm going to move on with a question for Andy Dobrushi. What strategies would you say have been so far most effective in turning the civil society advocacy into giving it real meaning, turning it into something that really approaches the institutions and their inclusion within the EU integration process?
Thank you, Hannah. Strategies. That's another overrated word, you know. But strategies. I'll not talk about this. I mean, we have so much experience accumulated here among friends and colleagues here from civil society that it would. I don't think I would pay due respect to what they have done so far in 35 years. You know, in kind of struggling and devising and in being quite innovative with the strategies, but also adapting to various contexts. Because, as we mentioned, and as I mentioned also in my presentation before, civil society has operated always in very difficult contexts. You know, sometimes they've been conducive, but let's say that mostly civil society has been hardened by the battles within the country, but also a bit with the attention deficit, from the European institutions. And what we're seeing in this new momentum is exactly some of this is being rectified, and I'll just illustrate you with one example, but I'll really call on my friends here and colleagues. They have many examples. I'm not going to start with the whole concept idea of the gradual integration, which came from the civil society organizations in the region, and it was embraced wholeheartedly because it gave a bit of an opening and a window. It oxygenated a bit a staled conversation, in terms of the future of the region, and we're very happy to see that the momentum now is serving as a kind of a push for the whole EU integration process. But going back to example, we have also within the Open Society Foundations, last year we launched an Ignita initiative, and it's barely a year old, but it's already showing real signs, when it comes to and what kind of momentum looks, how momentum looks to gradual, when it comes to gradual integration. And the idea was to move the civil society exactly from the sidelines to the center of the EU accession processes, linking research, policy, advocacy, but also the grassroots, And early this year, one of our partners from Pristina, KCSS, they put forward a focus proposal, basically grant the Western Balkan observer status in ENISA, which is the EU cybersecurity agency. And the ask began as a policy brief, and then it went through regional and EU-wide consultations, persistent follow-up with the Commission, and working through the bureaucratic layers, which we know are not the easiest sometimes, But now that the EU is revisiting the EU Cybersecurity Act, that recommendation is officially on the table and is being considered. So this is just one of the examples of how the strategy, what does it really mean. But to me, what's the most important, and for us, and I'm sure I share this thought with many of the colleagues that are here, but also who are not present, is that the idea is that the CSO, civil society, should stop orbiting around processes and start intervening in its design, And I think just by being here and the space that I mentioned earlier that is given by the ESC, this is one of the models that should be embraced and should be taken further, So.
Thank you very much. And for sharing the examples which best display how effective and useful can this communication between the civil society and the EU be. I'm going to move on with a question for you, Ambassador Sattler. How would you assess the current public trust among the people in the Western Balkans towards the European Union? And what can be done to somehow sustain this trust, if it's good enough, or perhaps strengthen it if it's not good enough, especially in times of political crisis, which are, as you've mentioned, very, very often in our region?
Well, there are shades of gray. If you look at the region, we have a different picture depending on the country you are exactly looking at. But overall, the numbers are really stable when it comes to the EU integration. And that has to do with what you mentioned, Amir, that the driving force for the last decades for all the countries in the region has been this goal, the big goal of one day joining the European Union. Not because the European Union is perfect, it's not. But everybody has somebody who lives there, kids studying or uncles living or visiting, and everybody knows what the European unification, the unification of the continent actually achieved in the daily lives of citizens of the European Union. And that's why these numbers are stable and good. So, I mean, it's here, it's close to 80% in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where I spent my last 5 years. It's anything also between 70 and 75%. Yes, differences between the Federation and Republika Srpska for the well-known reasons, but it's stable. I mean, if you look at Albania and Kosovo, I mean, there it's only, I think, surpassed the trust in the European Union is only surpassed by the trust in God. That was at least when I was there. So you have always between 80 and 90%. And yes, Serbia and North Macedonia, if you want, are a little bit different in that. especially when you then ask the other question, namely, do you think integration will happen? So the one thing is, are you in favor? And there you have stable numbers everywhere, a little bit lower in Serbia and in North Macedonia. But when you ask, actually, are you confident it's going to happen? Then, of course, in some of the countries, including the ones I mentioned, it's lower. And that's why even more important, what I mentioned before, is to make it happen, to take away that doubt, which, I have good understanding why North Macedonia citizens have doubts after what has happened there. And that's why it's very, very important to take away that argument that, actually these guys are not serious because they don't want us. So that would be in a nutshell, and to make it a bit shorter.
Thank you very much for being time aware while speaking, but also once again pointing out the values basically, which reflect in terms of public trust towards the EU and the seriousness of the EU when it comes to actually wanting to open the door for this region. Professor Đurović, I'm going to go with a question for you, drawing from both your academic research and policy experience. How would you assess the so far integration process in the Western Balkans? Has it been treated more as a technical or a political process?
Ako ću prvo odgovoriti,
If I want to start as somebody who was in charge for negotiations for years, it's a nightmare for small people who are very committed to criteria, benchmarks, preparation of action plans, laws. So it's very important. It's very important to have these people give structure to negotiation chapters. It defines benchmarks. But if we compare political commitment and political agenda that has been present in candidate countries, we can say that the politics has dominated successfully the accession process, not because we think it's important, it's simply more dominant. So it's not crucial that we just transpose acquis communautaire, that we write reports, that we achieve better scores. It's also very important to have political support. I remember when this political support in Montenegro used to be 200% and how easy it was to coordinate those processes. Today, this support is not 100%, so it's not easy to coordinate negotiations and accession. So it's a precondition to move on, to achieve progress. Then, in addition to stabilization, reconciliation, joint cooperation in the region, and all the way to stronger institutions and having a political dialogue, social cohesion, and all topics that are of concern for us on this integration path. All of this is necessary and required, and harmony among political elites. Political elites traditionally don't like a final stage of the negotiations because it reduces their rights, but that's the price of European integration. We know from Croatian and Slovenian experience, governments that led the EU integration lost the elections in the first elections after the integration, but this did not affect the economic development, economic conversion. It's a lively political life. So no government should fear EU integration. On the contrary, but my message is that regardless of the fact that the politics has dominated the process, technical parties is very important. Everything that government does cannot be seen. This political crisis in Montenegro created a gap between technical dynamic and what our parliament does. Therefore, it is very important for this political support to be consolidated, to be honest, and to allow Montenegro to make further progress. So I always vote for the technical part of negotiations, but of course political support is something unavoidable.
Can we go back to those answers from Slido now, please? And after we check your answers, we'll see if they somehow match what we've heard in this round. So the question was why the enlargement to the Western Balkans will be beneficial for the EU. And some of our answers include security, stability, geopolitics, whole Europe, inclusivity, EU will be a whole, stability. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have a couple of stabilities, securities, and peace, which also say something about our needs from the European Union. While we go with, yes, we have 15 more minutes, while we go with a really quick wrapping round, I would like you to go again with the phones if you're still into it and answer one more question which we have prepared for you, which is how many Western Balkan countries do you expect to join the EU by 2030? So the answers which are offered are 2, 4, 6, or none. So please don't vote none. Choose some of these numbers that you see, and we will try to check the answers as well. Yes, remove the option of none completely. We'll try to check the answers before we finish. So a quick round, very. No, we cannot go with more than 6. Okay, so a very quick, maybe 1 or 2 sentences answer before I leave a couple of minutes for interventions from the audience is the same question for all of you. If we meet again, let's say here or anywhere else in 5 years, hopefully I will moderate, what would success look like in terms of the topic we are talking about? For Montenegro, but also for the region, 5 years from today. Let's go in this order.
Listen, very quickly, the success, it would be measured in terms of, how irreversible these processes are, And second, to make sure that the gradual integration is not a replacement for full membership, So, and then we can debate like whether it's 2, 4, 6, in 5 years, Definitely we'll push, coming from the region, definitely our heart would be full if it was 6. But we would be happy even with less, like at this point, so, yeah. But the reversibility of these processes, I think this is what matters for people, and the full membership rather than the half glass, that we have seen so far.
Okay, I will check with you in 5 years. Okay, Deputy Prime Minister.
Ja mislim da ono osnovno.
The basic thing that we expect in this area where we live is that in the next 5 years, Montenegro, Albania will become new EU member states. And that's something that should be the goal of all of us, but also of the EU. If all of us focus properly, I think we can succeed in it. We have demonstrated both in Montenegro and Albania that we are ready to achieve this, and that the focus is only on integrations together with the economic development that accompanies it. And I believe that this should be the main topic of all of us. And I believe that in 5 years, in some of the similar meetings, similar to this one, that we will represent Montenegro as a new EU member state.
Because we had 18 votes who say that 2 countries will join the EU, but I think you've opened the voting. It's okay, we'll go back to it. Okay, Mr. Rupp, what's your impression?
Yes, first I find it interesting in this Slido survey that colleagues are very much focusing on peace, on stability. It's a bit coming back to the roots of the European Union. It's less about economic growth, economic prosperity, which is of course equally important, but I think we are coming back to our founding values. And I think this is encouraging that the EU is seen still as a source of stability for the Western Balkan countries, but also from our perspective. I think integrating them will help us to build more stability in the region and in Europe. That's the first point. And in 5 years, well, I hope that at least 2 countries will join, but what is equally important that we spread our values. Also in the countries that will not join by 2030, but that there is still a perspective. I think this is equally important that these countries will, or that we can help to strengthen rule of law and democratic and fundamental values in these countries. I think this is absolutely important. And let me say at this time, I should have said this before, but really, Andy, thank you very much to you and to the Open Society Foundation that you also support our work in such a, really in a great manner. I would like to thank you for this. And in 5 years, at least 2 countries and have a clear perspective for the others. I think this would be actually my perspective and my wish.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sattler.
The results of the first question is very much what you say. So it's back to the roots, back how the whole unification of the European continent started, namely on the rubbles of utter destruction. But I would also add that it's a reflection of the times we are in today, because geopolitically the sands are shifting. Geopolitically, suddenly, old certainties are not certainties anymore. And in this world, I think what is very positive is that people have this trust in the European Union. We are here to stay. We are here to stay in the Balkans. And we will stay with the region until the job is done and until you're a member of the European Union. And I think that is very, very important, and also a reflection why we have the result here to the first question you had. So yes, I mean, for me, obviously, being here in Montenegro, success means membership of Montenegro, but let me also add Albania. I think the two countries coming together and actually going as a duo, as a team, is in both countries and the European Union's interest. But let us not forget the others. My strong plea here is that not only that we keep anchoring the values of the European Union, but we also make a real progress in all the countries. That means leaving nobody behind, not leaving Bosnia-Herzegovina behind. I think this is very, very important. Yes, it probably needs a bit of a change of generation of politicians, and it will happen, I'm absolutely sure. But also it needs addressing the real difficult questions, the structural issues which we have in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and which made us, basically having these stop-and-go phases with very long stop phases and very short go phases. In my 5 years there, it was basically more than 3 years spent in blockades, where nothing was moving. And I think this needs to be addressed. Kosovo needs to be addressed as well. That's in the same context. We cannot afford the dialogue. There needs to be movement in there. So very important to measure success at the end of this term of the European Union leadership is to have progress of all the countries in the region, with a few countries, hopefully two, joining by the end of 29.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Professor Đurović. We'll do a big applause when they all.
Vi mislite 23?
You're thinking 2030. Well, 2030, two assumptions: to have 6 functional states and to have normalization of relationships in the region, especially relationships which are having a negative spillover, and this is a relationship between Belgrade and Pristina. If we have these assumptions, then we can talk about positive scenario. Let us say diplomatically, at least 4 countries that have opened all the negotiating chapters, and at least 1 have signed accession treaty, to have much more dynamic economic convergence and to have regained credibility of the enlargement policy, both in the region but also within the EU member states. For me, that would be a successful integration story. I agree that not a single country should be left behind in terms of enlargement, but if we meet these two assumptions, then none of them will be. Negative scenario, I don't want to comment. I think we all agree that there's none. I mean, shouldn't be there. We don't want to see this kind of scenario. We are all European countries. We are part of this process. And if we are coming back to the peace, prosperity, stability values, then all these 4 aspects are important for us, and all 4 of them are equally important. And without these values, there is simply a danger, a threat that the region is destabilized again, that we have poor regional cooperation, to have even poor relationship between the neighbors. So, absolutely in favor of EU integration and for the progress of all countries.
Mr. Kapitanović.
Hannah, if you really want me to be as short as possible, I can just say I do agree with everything with the colleagues said, but just one thing. Sorry, I mean, nothing remains in vacuum. The context is very important. What is my wish is that in 5 years, this geopolitical turmoil will not turn into even something nastier. First thing. The second thing, that anti-EU forces within the EU itself will not prevail. That's very important, because it will have a negative trickle-down effect to us. In 2030, I wish us to fully implement the Common Regional Market Action Plan, to close the socio-convergence gap with the EU to 50%. To remind you, when Croatia joined the EU, they were at 49. So actually, our task is to be at 50. If we can do it by 2030, that would be great. And to begin, and I totally agree with Ambassador Sattler, leaving no one behind, to have more opportunities for entire region to gradually phase into EU single market. And of course, last but not least, two economies joining the EU, Albania and Montenegro. Why? Because it would be huge relief and huge positive impulse for everyone. And that would be actually exactly the narrative that would on the ground contradict anti-European narratives that are still alive in the region.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapitanovic. Can we just check the final answers for the Slido? We will not have time for interventions from the audience, but I do encourage you to use the coffee break to communicate any feedbacks you might have. Okay, so I guess the previous voting is gone. Oh no, it's not actually. Okay, so 20 people who voted say that two Western Balkan countries they expect will join the EU by 2030. 6 people voted none. What did we agree, people?
6.
Okay, and then there are optimists, overall 2 who say
We
4
don't
or
count.
6 countries. Yes, the turnout is not great, but yeah, we do have some results. So, to kind of wrap all of this up, I would like to thank all of our panelists and all of you who have been here with us this morning. Having a room full of people like this who think like this, speak like this, and fight for the region like this really does give hope. So thank you. Please enjoy the coffee break and be back in around 15 minutes, I'd say, for the next panel session. You're free to go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Nema na čemu. Hvala vam.
Nisam mogao da se sjetim, u stvari se sve kasnije sjetio. Moja školska drugarica Alma Pašus, mislim da se znate. Ona je ovako mojih, znači, 55 godina, psiholog. Zato, tako sam nekako.
and feel free to choose an answer, and we will be coming back to it later. But now I have this great pleasure to introduce to you my panel, the colleagues that will be sharing with you some of their insights on the fundamentals of the growth plan. And let's begin with Ms. Ania Basilikova-Antowska. She is the head of policy and advocacy in Balkan Civil Society Development Network, here on my left. Then we have Ana Veziroglu, Deputy Head of Unit for Regional Strategy and Investments for the Western Balkans, Directorate General for Enlargement and Eastern Neighborhood from the European Commission. Then we have Mr. Boško Savković, Secretary General of the Serbian Association of Employers and co-chair of the EU-Serbia Civil Society Joint Consultative Committee. Next one we have Ms. Milena Mihajlović-Denić, Program Director at the European Policy Center. And at the very end, Ms. Krisela Hatzkai, Executive Director of Cooperation and Development Institute, CDI. A very great company indeed, and I would really love to give them enough space. In case that you have some questions in the meanwhile, please note them down. I will really try to give you also some space at the end for our common discussion. And let's start with Ms. Ania on my left. So Ania, based on your monitoring metrics, and we hope to hear a lot about it for those who are a little bit unfamiliar with it, what is the current state of play and last developments regarding the organized civil society in the Western Balkans? Can you give us a little bit of an overview? Yeah, you just have to turn yourself on. Yeah, like that. Very good.
Okay, yeah. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah. Well, good morning, almost afternoon to everyone. I'm honored to be part of this panel and discuss the state of civic space in the region. We heard a lot about the importance of civil society and civic space, but I'm here to present not so, I think, positive picture of what the current state of civil society actually is. And while there are positives that we can always find, the balance, the scale kind of tilts towards the negative, unfortunately. BCSDN has been monitoring the state of civil society for over 10 years now through our monitoring matrix. And in our last monitoring, we found three, let's say, interconnected patterns based on the three areas that we monitor. So the first one is the systematic repression of the fundamental freedoms. The second one is the politicized and opaque financial environment for CSOs. And the third one is the superficial involvement of civil society in policy making. So when we talk about the fundamental freedoms, about the basic freedoms of association, assembly, and expression, we see that it's very well regulated in terms of the formal guarantees. However, in practice, these freedoms are eroded, and this is especially true for Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. In Serbia, the foreign agents narrative is now back in full swing, coming also from the highest level officials. But Republika Srpska and Bosnia and Herzegovina has taken it to another level by introducing the foreign agents law, much like the Russian models, where the intention is basically to limit the activities of CSOs and intimidate them. Meanwhile, in Serbia, offices of CSOs have been raided in terms of because of the suspicion on USAID funds misuse, let's say, but there has been no follow-up, no findings for months now. In Republika Srpska, again, defamation was criminalized almost 2 years ago, and within a year there have been over 130 cases filed under this new law. So basically what we see is this growing trend of institutionalized repression and, in a way, criminalization of dissent, which is especially true when we talk about freedom of assembly in Serbia. Freedom of assembly, yes, there are restrictions across the region that we see, but nowhere as much as in Serbia. Here the suppression of student-led protests, environmental protests has become a norm, and it's so frequent that we are met with arbitrary detentions, so over 120 detentions related to protests just in 6 months. Then a lot of smears against those participating, attacks by pro-government groups which have been left unpunished, creating this culture of impunity. Basically, a lot of excessive, let's say, police force, including most disturbingly the use of a sonic weapon during one of the largest protests. Sorry. But what is probably most worrying is that the Agency for Security Information has started to be more involved in the intimidation of activists as well. When we talk about expression, again, we see problems, freedom of expression, we see problems across the region, and here we will mention the rise of SLAPs, so strategic lawsuits against public participation, which again aim to intimidate activists, journalists into silence. We talk about attacks that are left unresolved, unpunished against activists or investigative journalists, but also political interference in media freedom. And one additional, let's say, layer of restrictions that we see as well is the misuse of anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism regulation against civil society. And here again, an example from Serbia where the Administration for Prevention of Money Laundering has basically requested confidential data of staff of CSOs under the guise of compliance with the law, which shows this, again, institutionalized and financial harassment. The second point is the financial, let's say, environment, and here the focus is on how the access to funding has been highly politicized, and very often funding goes to organizations that are government affiliated or politically aligned with the government, with millions going to phantom organizations without any public record of their activity in the areas that they apply to, and so on. But it's not just the public funding that is problematic for CSO sustainability, because this is part of the resources. It's also the whole tax and fiscal framework in all of the countries, which is basically outdated and not really stimulating for CSOs. And this is weakening their financial viability, which is especially now exacerbated with the USAID funding cuts or suspension. And then the last point I want to make is that in terms of the involvement of civil society in policy making, there are formal mechanisms that exist, of course, but very often they have been reduced to tick-the-box exercises. In North Macedonia and in Montenegro, the councils have not been functional for 3 years now, and this blocks, in a way, the implementation of the strategy for cooperation, the reform of the key CSO laws. Kosovo was, for a while, the leader, let's say, in the region in terms of involvement of civil society and cooperation with the government. However, we see again this worrying, this decline in the cooperation, and hopefully with the reignition of the new government strategy, we'll see a renewed commitment towards this inclusive governance, let's say, and similarly the case with Albania with the new roadmap, and in Bosnia the new strategy. But probably most worrying in this situation is, again, the situation in Serbia, where many organizations have basically withdrawn from any cooperation with the authorities, including the Council for Enabling Environment, in a way in a protest against this systematic harassment and lack of genuine dialogue with civil society. So this is like a brief hopefully, overview on what is the situation like with civil society.
Thank you, Anya. I see that we will have quite some points that we can further discuss in the debate. I can imagine there was some blood boiling in the audience. I hope so. So please note down the question or comments for Anya, and we move further on to Ms. Anna. So you come from the European Commission. What is the Commission's point of view on the implementation of the growth plan in the Western Balkans and in the region? I mean, now we have heard a matrix or an observation. How does the Commission see the situation?
Indeed, we have seen the matrix. We know the matrix, but thank you very much for reminding us all today. Again, and thank you for your question. And I would like, if possible, also to kind of speak about the accession process as well. So, because I think at the end of the day, it's one policy, even though we have two strands at the moment. So, Indeed, we heard a lot in the previous panel, the context, in the opening panel, the context where we are, with the what we hear about the momentum on enlargement policy, which by now is a cliche, of course. But we have also seen action around it, and we heard that this is a historical opportunity for all six. Some have taken the message, others not to the same extent or not at all. We heard about where all the countries stand. I don't think I need to explain to you. You know it best. Montenegro was considered today a front runner. I mean, it has been considered for a while, but actually also running it through. Albania has taken big steps. We are hoping to open. Let me not go too fast. To open all clusters this year after the 3 that have already been opened. And then I can go ahead with North Macedonia, where we would like to see more on their side, both on the constitutional amendments, but also on the necessary rule of law reforms. Serbia, you've heard our commissioner many times. I don't need to go ahead in this, and also Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. But what I would like to say, and to repeat, I think it's important, because we are a fundamentals panel here, is that you see throughout, listing the 6, there is a thread behind every statement, let's say, and this thread is the fundamentals, is cluster 1. Why Montenegro is going ahead? Because it's fulfilled the interim benchmarks of cluster 1. Albania started with cluster 1. North Macedonia needs to move on the rule of law related reforms and of course the constitutional amendments. Serbia the same, Kosovo the same, Bosnia the same. So, it's again another cliche that the fundamentals are at the heart of the enlargement policy, but they are. It is a reality. And they determine the pace of the negotiations, and the rest. I do not need to explain all of this to you. And why all this is important? Because we do want to have a larger union, this is clear, but we also want a larger union that continues to be a union of freedoms, of rights, of values for all in existing member states and of course also new member states alike. And civil society, coming now to you and the important work you do. Civil society is a crucial component of any democratic system, and we need your participation, your effective participation in the public policy making processes, because you help build the resilient societies, and because you help strengthen the decision-making process, because you help making sure that all these economic, social, political reforms that are hopefully taking place are also anchored to society and thus sustainable. And of course, because they can only be sustainable if they represent the society. And of course, coming back to the enlargement process we've also been saying, preparing for accession needs to be a whole of society process. So again, here we need you very much. And what we expect from our partner governments, who are the main stakeholders in terms of in the negotiations, for example, we want to make sure that they guarantee the basic freedoms, association, assembly, expression, that they develop the financial environment, enabling environment that you mentioned that is needed and it's not there, and that of course they maintain the effective structures between civil society and the governments and the state. Now, the way to involve civil society in the framework of accession negotiations is to be decided by the candidate countries, of course. But it has to be inclusive. Again, it was mentioned, it has to be an inclusive process that allows civil society to bring in the very valuable policy ideas into the policy-making discussions, especially, of course, in this case, related to the EU-related reforms, and to communicate these reforms and these proposals to the citizens. Because without that, we cannot go very far. Our ambassador, of course, mentioned that for the moment we have a stable support, let's say, for the European Union, but it is vary depending on the country. Now, very rightly so, we report it in an annual enlargement package every year. It's in most of the countries, as you mentioned, the legal frameworks might be good. They might represent and align international standards, but in practice, civil society organizations are still confronted with challenges ranging from administrative red tape to systematic and meaningful, or the lack of systematic and meaningful consultations, and increasing pressure and, in some cases, attacks. You know this much better than I do. So what we need, what we are doing on our side is, and you've heard it from us many times, that we look for ways to support you in this work. We have, under IPA 3, we have already allocated an amount of more than 350 million from 2021 to 2025, and there is more to come, and you have heard our Commissioner mentioning an increase in the support to civil society organizations. And we're also reallocating to ensure that if there is a gap, and where there is a gap with the withdrawal of US funds, for example, we will see how much we can actually contribute to this. But money, of course, is not the answer to everything. And political support, in this case, is equally important, if not more important, maybe. But here I would also like to underline the dedication and commitment that Commissioner Kos has demonstrated from day one of taking office. You heard her earlier, but you've actually seen her in action, I think most of you. Wherever she goes, she meets you, she listens to you. It's something that comes out of her heart. The ambassador mentioned it earlier as well. I do not need to list the number of meetings with the civil society, also including youth dialogues, including meetings with women and other parts of society. This is something that she has done and she will continue to do, and we see it, again, you have probably seen it yourselves, but we also see it in our everyday work. So it's not something, as the ambassador mentioned, it's not an afterthought, it's part of the main part of the core of the policy. And coming now to the role of the civil society that we actually need as well, not only because it is important for your societies, but also because it is important for our work in the enlargement and gradual integration. I put this together work. We need you to continue monitoring and assessing progress on the ground. In the context of the accession process, and you are aware, of course, of our regular and very structured consultations that we have every year in the context of the enlargement package, and I would like to take the opportunity to actually thank you all for your contributions. These are very important parts of our assessments that come out in the autumn, and we will see again the results later this year. And then we come to the Reform and Growth Facility, which, as you know, also calls for a meaningful involvement of civil society in the design, implementation, and monitoring of key reforms. Here, I would like to say that we had a fast-track preparation of the reform agendas last year, but we are now entering the phase of the implementation. So as we monitor the implementation of the reform agendas, we will also monitor how civil society is involved in the monitoring of and the implementation of the reform agendas. And I would like to mention, as I mentioned earlier as well, the national monitoring committees that are foreseen under the facility agreements and are about to be set up. And as required by the facility agreements, they will include, where relevant, representatives of the civil society. So this is now that we're working on at the moment, and we will soon be presenting to government we'll soon engage with the governments on the first meetings of the National Monitoring Committee. So you will hear about them in the coming months. Of course, there's a shadow reporting, so we will continue to receive from you, and it's very useful also, including in this context, but also in many other more informal ways through our delegations and also directly in headquarters. I would also like to mention our Western Balkans Reform and Growth Monitor, the projects that we launched last week with some of you, I believe. And this will also help us monitor the progress of the growth plan as a whole. And I want to really emphasize the importance of keeping the growth plan as one, not only the reform agendas, which are very national, but also bringing the regional perspective. Thank you, Amer, for your contributions earlier. But also the single market perspective, that is a very important part of the growth plan. So we are certainly looking forward to your contributions also through this project. Now, taking one step, or a few steps up, if I must say, you have seen that also the European Commission's work program includes the drafting of a strategy on civil society, which aims to strengthen efforts to support, empower, and protect civil society, so also at the EU level. And given the importance of the enlargement policy in this, that this specifically this college has taken, we believe that issues pertinent to civil society in the context of enlargement will also be part of this strategy. Just to close, I would like to thank the European Economic and Social Committee and its joint consultative committees for the dedication in this work, in this field, and also for setting up the not so new anymore, for me at least, enlargement candidate members initiative, which gives the opportunity to you, civil society organizations of the region, to actually contribute to the policy work of the European Economic and Social Committee, thus preparing for your future in the European Union. Very much a prime example, if I may, of our gradual integration concept. I will leave it to that.
Thank you very much for sharing the plans, some of the realities, and also the ways that you make sure that you are including civil society organizations in the process structurally. Because I really liked what you said in the beginning of your speech, that CSOs build a strong society on a long run, and it is a long run strategy that we try to follow. Thank you very much. And we continue to our colleague Boško. Boško, what are the main topics of discussion within the JCC and maybe the main achievements of this committee related to the new growth plan? Please share it with us.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The English is not a problem for me, but I will speak on my mother language. Whenever I have a chance, I try to use it. So take your earphones, please.
First of all, I want to inform you that I'm very happy and proud that our students who were running 2,000 kilometers arrived in Brussels last night. So congratulations. I would like to thank to the Economic and Social Committee, because the students are now at the entrance of the building of this committee, and they will be received by our chairman Laurencio. So there will be 30 of students at this meeting. So I want to thank to Laurencio, to Zorko, to everybody for enabling them this kind of meeting. It will mean a great deal for them. They're kids, 20 years old, so they actually run to the Brussels 2,000 kilometers to send a message. So they took their sneakers in front of the parliament and left it there. There is no stronger message than that one. The question regarding growth plan, well, when people start talking about 2.8 billion euros, I heard a statement of our president said, well, Serbia will get 800 million when everything is calculated. Then I heard comments that it's easier to take loans from Chinese in that amount instead of getting the money from EU, but trying to implement all the standards. So this narrative about growth plan is very much present in Serbia, and I wouldn't put my bet on a growth plan as such. I would put my bet on a civil society and the pressure that civil society can actually put on the government to change the narrative about the EU. They are saying that the government doesn't want to change the EU because they will lose the power. I am not sure that the current government in Serbia wants to be part of the EU. And the EU actually brought these people in power 12 years ago, to be honest. So this is the government that won't do everything in order to get into the EU. The purpose of the government in Serbia is to remain in power at any cost. Through Trump, through Chinese, visiting Putin, visiting even the EU, at any cost, just to remain in power. If they lose the power, they will lose much more than just the power. They will lose the money they stole from citizens of Serbia. And everybody knows that. In the European Commission, they know how much money they stole. And everybody is pretending that this is not happening, like we are living in a matrix. This is happening in other countries. It's not just Serbia.
Sad, što se tiče onoga što ste me pitali, kako je položaj civilnog sektora?
Now, regarding the question about the role of the civil society, civil society is in a very poor situation. My colleagues from the trade unions are in a very bad situation because we are talking for years. JCC is issuing declarations. We are asking the government to change the labor law. Even the employers are asking that to adopt the law on strike. Nothing is changing. They cannot motivate their members to work on that. When it comes to the Employers Association, I'm not just General Secretary and one of the founders. I have my private company for 22 years. I'm dealing with culture. I'm making movies, exhibitions, etc. You can imagine how it's to live in Serbia as a private entrepreneur and dealing with the culture. And you're part of the government. The only condition to be successful entrepreneur in Serbia is to be part of the government or part of the mafia. And I'm not as such, so it's very difficult for me to operate, to communicate with my employees. It's very difficult to survive, but I'm still alive and I'm proud to be here, which means that it's doable still. When it comes to the CSOs, and I'm very often in contact with them, I know these people, we are all working with the same aim. I think it's a great shame that the European Union knows how much money which is intended for the NGO sector and which is sent to the government of Serbia actually ended up in some totally fake gongs. So the gongs were getting EU money from the government, and our investigative journalists were making articles about that. Money for the protection of family or something like that. Millions went to the gongs. This is money laundering. These are organizations which are like 6 or 7 organizations and with the same address, fake organizations. Nobody reacted. So independent media are not the only one to react to that. You from the European Union must react. In Montenegro, nothing would have happened. It will turn out that if I'm interfering into the Montenegrin internal affairs, in Montenegro, nothing would have happened if there wasn't the change of power. While Milo Đukanović was in power, Montenegro was not on the EU path. I think you can agree with that. So it's impossible with the people in government who are in power for so long to get into the EU. Only when the government was toppled, the old government was toppled, there was an increased chance for the EU accession, and I really hope that Montenegro will be part of the EU very soon. The same goes in Serbia. As long as you stick to stabilocracy with this kind of government, you are losing. You're losing the race. We are losing the race. Civil society is losing the race. The only one gaining is those who are in power and who are still taking the money from the people. Talking about this race, I don't think that this race is lost for us. Maybe I don't want to be part of the EU. Maybe I will not live to be part of the EU. But what I want to live in a stable, normal society when I know that the courts are doing their job, the prosecution service is doing their job, the democratic institutions exist, that they are functioning. We don't have that. Because if I have all that, then I have the fundamentals. Then I have the same things on which the EU is based. Who doesn't understand that? Well, those who do not understand the fundamentals, they don't need to accede to the EU. If we have these democratic institutions once, I would be happy with that. Somebody asked me whether democratization of Serbian society is at a high level to be accepted by the EU. Maybe it's not, because for 12 years we are brainwashing people through media. How now to return the people to the EU path? I know I could do it the same way they did it, through brainwashing. It's not a big problem. But if you lose Serbia, you're losing the whole region. From my country, unfortunately, which is the biggest, it has, they are pressuring other countries in the region. You know very well that the stability in Bosnia will not be solved until the Serbia is resolved. The issue of Bosnia is still the power keg. It can explode every minute. Maybe you won't have a war, but you're going to have a conflict which is ongoing. I'm afraid that the government in Serbia has a possibility to impact the government in Montenegro, because the Serbian community in Montenegro is quite large, so they can impact on the government in Montenegro. Not to talk about Kosovo or how much damage we can do to ourselves in this respect. So if you want the whole region to be stable, make Serbia stable. First of all, help these kids who are running to Brussels, and they will now have a students list at the upcoming elections, and I hope that they will change to history that the former opposition parties, and that they will bring us freedom, because we weren't able to do that. Thank you.
Hvala, thank you, Boško, for sharing this passion. And then for me, for sure, when you have mentioned that if nothing will change, motivation will be gone, but I'm still here and fighting, no? So I think it's a passion to work also in extreme conditions. That is the vision of civil society organizations still here and